responsible.
Say that again.
Masjid Muhammad, which is on New Jersey Avenue here in Washington, D.C. Malcolm X was responsible for helping put that mosque together, and it's still in operation today. And there's a plaque there's a plaque at the cornerstone that says erected under the leadership of the Honorable Muhammad. So when I talk about Malcolm, I just don't talk about Malcolm X as the individual man, but it's really the entire gamut of who we are in the Black radical tradition. So that's what I teach. I teach Africano history. I'm currently teaching the history of Islam and Africa and the introduction to African American history from 1877.
So say that again. You're teaching, what's that first?
The history of Islam and Africa. That's
history.
What I'm currently teaching right now. You know, so even when you think about that, 30% of our ancestors who were enslaved from Africa, they were Muslims, so they came from parts of Africa.
30%. 30%. Okay.
Either they were Muslims or they came from part of Africa, in which the Islam as institutions. When I say Islam, I mean Islam with the orientation of African people and the traditional African belief systems that go along with it, which is a lot different than what people know than when you look at Islam in the Middle East. But I say that because when we get down to the present day, and we begin to talk about Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam, even here in Washington, D.C., Yaro Merrill lived in colonial times in Georgetown. He was a Black man who was a professed Muslim. So what I say that is that when you look at the history of radicalism in the West, it started with our African ancestors and enslavement, and it's through that trajectory that we can continue to study this Black radical tradition. We get Black nationalism from it. We get Pan-Africanism from it. We get a lot of different streams of radicalism, even way before we get to Malcolm X. Malcolm came into the nation in 1952. From 1952 to about 1963, he was in the nation, and then from 63 until 65, he was pretty much independent, of himself.
Wow. So in terms of you studied the autobiography, let's deal with that, now. First the autobiography, and I see you have your stack of scholarly books here. Appreciate that. I mean, there's been speculation, I know you may have heard it rather recently, about who did Alex Haley actually write, authenticate that book. Have you heard anything, or what has been your analysis of that over time?
My assessment of the autobiography of Malcolm X is that Malcolm X dictated the book to Alex Haley.
Okay. And when you say dictated, meaning that
Malcolm wasn't the writer.
Right. Okay, so he was the right.
Malcolm wasn't the writer.
Okay.
Alex Haley wasn't a historian. He was a journalist.
Right.
All right. So Malcolm had a lot of control over the autobiography while he was alive. Right. But when you read the autobiography of Malcolm X and you read the later chapters, I think the last 2 or 3 chapters, you see that the tone changes. Right.
Okay.
And one of the things in the book that people like to run with now, and it's even in the movie Malcolm X, right? When you look at the movie Malcolm X, and Malcolm goes to Mecca and he comes back, and the movie depicts Malcolm as having this radical change of Islam, as if there's a Sunni orientation that that he didn't know about, right? That really is not true. Okay. Malcolm X, if you go to the Schoenberg Center and read the Malcolm X file, you would see that Muslims from all around the world wrote Malcolm X letters. You will also find that Malcolm X used to travel to the West Coast, and he used to meet with these students called the African Asian Drum. And these were African Asian Muslims that used to call Malcolm out so that way he could talk to the group. We also got to understand that Malcolm was in charge of Mosque number 7 in New York City. All right, that is the cornerstone of Islam in the Black community for those who are not of the Sunni orientation. So if you look at New York City now, New York City have more orientations of Muslims probably anywhere here in the United States. And that same orientation was there now. So when I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, I think it's an absolutely great start for anybody who really do not know about Malcolm, because it's the closest that you're going to get to Malcolm himself, his words. All right. Now the thing about Malcolm X is that Malcolm has stayed alive in the American pop culture as well as political culture, because it's the grassroots immediately after his death began to take his recordings and sell those recordings on the street from generation to generation. And of course, the hip hop generation has always done a very good job of making sure that Malcolm X has stayed alive. When you listen to Dead Prayers, there's some Malcolm Garvey Hewitt. You know, when you still look at Public Enemy, Fight the Power, Malcolm X, the Old Arrest and Development, Malcolm X is in there too. But going back to the autobiography of Malcolm X, I think the autobiography is very good. Once you start really reading other sources about Malcolm, though, you can see where Alex Haley's voice in the latter part of the book changed the original voice of Malcolm from the beginning of the book. Even when you go and you read at the end of the book, because Ozzie Davis did his eulogy. Even when you read Ozzie Davis' eulogy, in his own words, is a very powerful piece. You know, calling Malcolm as our shining black prince. You know, and Dr. John Henry Clark, for those who know about our warrior scholar, Dr. John Henry Clark.
I just got his book here.
He criticizes Spike Lee.
You mean, does he do it in that Long Walk, or he doesn't
do it in he doesn't do it in the Great Mighty Walk. It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube with Dr. John Henry Clark talking about Malcolm X. And basically what he said is that Spike Lee didn't do his research enough to be able to not overly commercialize Malcolm. Right? And Dr. Clark said that, you know, Spike Lee talked to him for about 30 or 45 minutes, and that was it. So if you kind of look at, a man who's a warrior scholar, a man who was around with Malcolm, put the Organization of African American Unity in place, patterned that after the Organization of African Unity, which today, the literature that would be the AU, there were a lot of people around, but we also got to understand that Spike Lee wasn't making a documentary. He was making a movie. Right. Yes, so sir. Anytime you make a movie, you make the movie for what they call the spectator, and that is the audience who's coming to watch the movie. Now, I always say, because I saw the movie in '92, I was a college student, 20 years old, and for me, knowing a little something about Malcolm X, I still think that is a very powerful movie. Even now, when I think of Malcolm X, I think of Denzel. And I think of Malcolm X, right? Because Denzel played such a powerful role in trying to really channel that energy of Malcolm. His role was so good that it really became very transparent that you think you're looking at Malcolm. I even asked my students, how many of you all have seen a picture of Malcolm X that that isn't Denzel? Right? Some of them have never seen a real picture of Malcolm X. But they saw the picture of Denzel playing Malcolm X. So even from there, it's a starting point to get into a deeper conversation.
Wow. Yeah, I can see that. Somebody say something today, something they didn't know Will Smith was a rapper, and that's how young people, they just know him from film, so they can probably only imagine that,
That's important, because I had a student, when I was at Howard and I was teaching at Howard, we was talking about when the movie NWA came out. And my student told me, she said, well, I just thought Ice Cube made Disney movies.
Oh, really? Wow.
I was like, wow,
okay.
Student come to classroom and say, hey, can you tell me about the 80s? Why was Ronald Reagan so bad?
Wow.
So this let you know how important history is, because it's a continuance, but everybody's born within their own time period. Until you can go back and revisit that past and hope for that past, and then bridge that gap and come forward, right? You got to have those gaps. You got to have people to give you the information so that way you can fill that gaps. Because without that, you don't know what you're dealing with. So this is why, and I say this all the time, you know, I like the spirit of Black Lives Matter, but you got to understand who Snick was. You know, you got to go back and understand the core. You even got to go back and understand, you know, the Niagara movement. To understand how white supremacy over time have tried to either destroy or neutralize these movements. And even if they don't want to destroy you, they're going to try to co-opt you in some type of way. I mean, that's really what history does. History is not just individuals learning a bunch of facts or being able to regurgitate them. We start off there. We all got to have a core level, a foundation level. But at somewhere along the way, you have to get into all of the other aspects of history. When we look at one of the things that Dr. John Henry Clarke says in The Great Mighty Walk, you know, he mentioned William Leo Hansberry. He mentions Arthur Schomburg.
Yes.
These men.
Now, John Henry Clarke. Now, I know Schomburg was one of his key teachers up there when he went to Harlem. Right.
Yeah, without a doubt. But they also told him different aspects and different methodologies and different historiographies of how to look at history. All right, not just regurgitating facts and knowing facts, but trying to understand how the causation of events over a long period of time changes within time and space. You know, because that's what we're really dealing with. And this is, you know, if I can, you know, quite shortly, this is why I told you I was going to bring some of the books that have really come out in the last 10 years. Now,
I saw that one before.
Malcolm X on Afro-American history. This book here has been around since 1967. But I brought this because this is a great book to really read, because these are the excerpts of Malcolm talking about the importance of history himself. These are his exact words.
I saw that one.
I know that you are doing the program with Dr. Jerry Ball. And this is certainly his book.
Yes.
The Alive Reinvention, looking at,
and you know, I haven't read
Bandy Marble's book.
Right. But I read it. I mean, that's just how I did it.
You know, so I mean, this is one of the important books right here. And Dr. Stephen Barrows, you know, he actually edited my dissertation for me.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay.
You know, these are some strong hitters that really understand the legacy of Malcolm X. You know, I would definitely have people, you know, to get that book here. Fighting for Our Place in the Sun.
Wow.
This book has just come out.
Oh, really?
Dr. Richard Benson.
Fighting for Our Place in the Sun.
Yes, sir. Let me read the correct title. Fighting for Our Place in the Sun, Malcolm X and the Radicalization of the Black Student Movement, 1960 and 1973.
Wow.
So Dr. Richard Benson.
Show the other camera too, just to,
there we go. So Dr. Richard Benson, he actually teaches at Spelman College or Spelman University. He also was my outside reader for my dissertation, which was student radicalism in the African diaspora, Black campuses in the Ethiopian Student Union in North America from 1960 to 1974. But this is probably one of the most, I would say, impacting book right here. Because one of the things that he does is that he goes down into Durham, North Carolina, and in Durham they had created the Malcolm X University. Okay, when you look at the Black Studies Department at Duke University, it was really put into play because the radical students decided that they were going to create their own Black Studies space outside of the control of the institution.
Wow.
But you have to look at the students in the same way that I look at the students. And that is, when Malcolm died in 1965, I say this all the time, when Malcolm X died in 1965, he birthed the movement. When Dr. King died in 1968, the Civil Rights Movement basically went with him. And the reason is because the young people were able to internalize the ideals and the world vision of Malcolm X from their space. And Malcolm was able to talk to those who was basically on the margin of society and who was the disenfranchised. So we could go back and we can look at Hubert P. Newton, Bobby Seale, the Black Panther Party, right? And then we can start even look at individuals who were coming through African Bambaataa, Universal Zulu Nation. Right? We can look at the East Coast and how the impact of the 5% Nation of Islam had on that earlier part of hip hop culture.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Right.
Chuck
Ron
D,
Kim.
Professor
Right.
Griff,
Yeah,
Kim,
yeah.
all of those
Mm-hmm.
individuals. So Malcolm was able to articulate a message not only to college students, but to the average brothers and sisters that was on the street.
That's right. That's right.
And this is really what Dr. Benson's book does. And he gets into the type of curriculums, the type of programs they put in place.
Wow.
Now, this came out fall 2013. This is the Journal of African American History. This is the journal that Dr. Carter G. Woodson founded.
Oh, right. Yes.
Put out by the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. Solid. Right.
And they're still going, right?
They're still going.
Right.
And that's what I was saying earlier. I was talking to a friend that one of the, if you can't beat up people, sometimes what you need to do is neutralize their institution. So the everyday brother and sister don't think anything exists. But that's not true. We still have people that are putting out tremendous amount of work, but sometimes it doesn't get to the places that it needs to get to. So sometimes when you go to the Black community, one of the reasons you can't find these books because they're academically published books. So if you're not within these college spaces, if you're not going to these conferences, you're not able to get this literature unless you're just one of those people who are looking for it. So
yes,
one of the reasons I wanted to bring the book is so people can know that Malcolm X is still well and alive. We are studying him. We're teaching him. We're looking at Malcolm X from his international perspective in Africa and the Middle East, as well as being here in the United States. This is a very good book, The Chronography of Malcolm X. This came out maybe about 2004. This came out in 2013, the University of Kansas Press. And basically, this is the book that looked at Malcolm X from the aspect of popular culture. So when we think about Malcolm X and how we kept Malcolm X alive, so for us who were in the 80s in the Afrocentric era, and we were listening to Brand Nubian, we were listening to Tribe Called Quest, and we were wearing the Malcolm X buttons, hats, coats, medallions. You know, we didn't realize the impact that would have to create a discussion with people who did not know about Malcolm X. All right, and this is what this talk about. Oftentimes we kind of sometimes make fun of the brothers on the street selling incense and books and oils, but those brothers were the ones who were selling the recordings, the tapes, the buttons, the posters of Malcolm X, keeping Malcolm X alive. And also let me make this point. This book is written by a white guy from Canada, I believe. Right? So he looked at this book from the space. When you look at this picture, which is very intentional, you know, I'll put it up there. You know, when you look at that picture, this is a very intentional taken picture by Malcolm. All right, looking at him in terms of a very.
I'm watching the show with my team right now on Eli. He's interviewing Dr. Latif Tarik. I know both of the gentlemen. I want to wish you a great success tonight. We're going to have a program on May 20th at Everlasting Life featuring Derek Johnson as Mr. Brother Malcolm X. I am his publicist. My number 301-420-0000.
Did she call in? Okay, I don't know what's going on. Okay, all right.
All right, brother, so let me tell you something.
Okay.
We just bought an answer machine from the station.
Okay.
The phone must have rang, but I didn't see it.
Oh,
it rang
okay.
6 times.
All right.
It goes to the answer machine. So this young lady is listening and watching you now.
Yeah.
Tell her to call back in and we'll be able to pull her up at the time.
Oh, okay.
I just didn't see it.
All right.
You should see the
I didn't see it go either. But okay.
Yeah, that's
Well,
the answer machine. Well,
if someone called, just call back in. Someone called, just call back in. Okay. So
All right, so I got two more. One, the geographies of liberation, the making of an Afro-era political imaginary, right? And we're looking at Malcolm X as a political figure. After Malcolm took heart, he also began to travel throughout Europe, the Middle East, and travel throughout Africa. and Malcolm was asked to come by the invitation of heads of states. So it's very ironic. For instance, Malcolm spoke at Oxford University, and he was invited to come to Oxford University by that of the Islamic Students Association, and it was in Sheffield, England. And in Sheffield, England, the newspaper wrote a big article about how successful his visit was not. The students turned around and wrote a rebuttal to that, and they had to come back and retract it because Malcolm was very openly accepted at Oxford University. So when we think about Malcolm X and his potential relationship during the time where the Middle East was actually coming into its own sense of power. So we're going to look at, of course, if you go back and we look at some of the revolutionary movements of Algeria, we go back and we look at Egypt, we look at Saudi Arabia, and we look at the rise of what we so-called today call the Middle East, which is really Northeast Africa. Malcolm was a very great threat, because one of the things that he was able to do when he was in Africa was be able to talk to the Organization of African Unity. They would not allow him to speak when they were in session, but he was able to speak to enough of African heads of states to where they passed a resolution on behalf of Negroes in America. So I mean, that's important because we know that what Malcolm wanted to do was take the United States to the United Nations. Okay, and understanding that first people that really talked about Patrice Lumumba. You know, Malcolm met Patrice Lumumba when he came to the United Nations. He also met Fidel Castro. He came to the United Nations. So when we look at Malcolm X in terms of his international stature, he had an incredible international stature. I mean, he was considered a head of state. And the reason he was a head of state because whether some people believe it or not, we are a black nation. I mean, it's like 50 million plus black people in America. I mean, that is a nation within itself, and with the proper type of organization of governance, in which why Malcolm wanted the Organization of African American Unity, you know, to bring some structure so that way we can have a voice amongst the other bodies of international players. You know, so that's why that book I think is a very good, important.
Show that one again. That last one.
It's called The Geographies of Liberation.
In case anybody missed it. Okay.
You know, and the last book here is Malcolm X Michigan Worldview. This is particularly a Black Studies. This is particularly a Black Studies book, and they're looking at the personalities of Malcolm X from various writers and how they look into how he impacted all aspects of Black culture. One of the articles in the book, Malcolm X, an education of positive youth development challenged by street culture. One of the things that we know that when you look at the brothers and sisters, but particularly the brothers, when you look at Elder Cleaver's Soul on Ice, within Soul on Ice, Elder Cleaver speaks about how he used partly the Nation of Islam, but he mainly talks about how he used the transformation of Malcolm X to transform himself.
Wow. Yes.
All right. Yes, and to understand a man like Elder Cleaver, but we could also look at a man like George Jackson. You know, George Jackson never, from my study, George Jackson never really talked about Malcolm X, but he certainly used his space in prison to transform himself by elevating the way that he thinks. By seeing the world in a very different place and seeing his relationship to both capitalism and white supremacy. You know, that made, now Elder Cleaver was lucky because he was able to get out. But get out of prison.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
But obviously,
so you saying Eldridge Cleaver learned about Malcolm while he was in prison?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
He was part of, Eldridge was part of the Nation of Islam.
I did not know that.
Yes, and he broke with the Nation of Islam inside of prison when Malcolm broke with the Nation of Islam.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So he became more of a Malcolmite. That's what they call him, right? And these are the disciples and the followers of Malcolm X, separate of the teachers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So even for myself, I came in really studying Malcolm from the aspect of learning more about Black nationalism. Now, I knew that the Nation of Islam had a Black nationalist orientation under Black liberation theology. But what if you're not a Muslim? Right? So that's why that's one of the reasons why Malcolm established two organizations, Mosque Incorporated, and then he had the Organization of African American Unity. Okay, giving space, you know, to us being with having political and ethnic centric objectives over our religious beliefs.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Powerful, powerful. So let's, you know, just build upon, you know, and I just heard my brother, our brother Malik, and, you know, talking about Dr. Khalid and, you know, just the role, you know, he actually added on to Malcolm X in terms of, you know, his, I'd say, you know, the differences in terms of his political, becoming more global in orientation. For instance, I mean, you know, when you travel as much as you do, you know, you might feel a certain way about the world, and you may want to do things faster. And that's what I read. I reread the autobiography, and he felt that things weren't necessarily moving fast enough. And, you know, if you know, his brain, you know, he probably like, well, we could do this, we could do that, but everybody else may not necessarily be on the same, you know, thought processes. So what was some of the people that began to influence Malcolm during that transition? I mean, and I don't know if Dr. Clark and, you know, I know it's some different other people, but
well, let me start here. If you go to Google and you punch Malcolm X, Carlos Cook, Kwame Nkrumah, and Adam Clayton Powell, they are all sitting together at a rally in Harlem.
Carlos Cook was Ram, right?
No, Carlos Cook is one of the early Black nationalists out of New York, who would have been elder to Malcolm. And actually, I believe there's a book that's about a needed book that's about to be ready to be published on Carlos Cook. But I say those four names because Malcolm X's statue as an individual man outgrew that of the Nation of Islam. All right, and I know a lot of people don't want to hear that because obviously a lot of people are not going to put Malcolm X as an individual above the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, right? But when you look at that picture, you have Kwame Nkrumah, Adam Clayton Powell, and Malcolm X. Kwame Nkrumah being the first president of Ghana in 1957, a Pan-Africanist, right? Adam Clayton Powell being the man who he was, probably one of the strongest Black congressmen that we had before they got him up out of there. But he was such a very powerful figure, not only as a congressman, but also within that radical community of Harlem, New York. Okay, and then Malcolm X himself. So, you know, I still put it on the FBI. I really do. Malcolm's separation from the Nation of Islam. It was when you cannot even get the FBI files on Malcolm X. And you can actually, I didn't bring that particular book, all right? But there's a book called Malcolm X and the FBI, okay?
I think I saw that somewhere.
Produced by, I think, published by James Conn, right? And I think James Conn is the same brother who wrote the book Martin and Malcolm. Okay, so if you look up Martin and Malcolm as a book, you'll definitely find that other book. The infiltration within the Nation of Islam occurred from its beginning. Now, J. Edgar Hoover, as we know, was able to neutralize the African nationalist, Black Power movement, the student movement here in the United States, simply because J. Edgar Hoover was around from Garvey to the time Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated, and that's a very long time. We would not even know really what Malcolm was doing between 1952 to 1955 if it wasn't for FBI documents. Because by the time 1955 came around, they already had the Nation of Islam under their radar. During World War II, the government did not want W.B. Du Bois or A. Philip Randolph to speak out against the war. But they couldn't stop the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So basically, what they did was pick them up by executive order. And draft him, right? You know, and he was far over draft age. He was born in 1897. He was
42.
So yeah, so he was over draft. He was over draft age, right? But the moment that Malcolm X comes out of prison between 52 and 55, they have records on him. So that let you know that the government already had this group under surveillance. Now, one of the reasons they will have this group under surveillance because this is not really the first Black nationalist type orientation group in America. You had the African Blood Brotherhood, who were in the 1930s, I believe. So you've always had these radical Black voices, but now what you have is mass appeal, and now what you have is very keen organization,
as well as communication.
And communication, exactly. That's right. Because one of the things that we have to always understand is that the new technologies of the world, in the midst of the changing post-World War II society, is what really help us to communicate a lot better. Radio, television, and then we also remember that a lot of these take place within a Cold War society, right? So we have America. We have America that is very suspicious of anybody that is anti-American. Communism become one of them. So let's kind of talk about that, right? Because Malcolm X and Dr. King, they would really become these national voices because they were a void. Okay, so Paul Robeson, Claudia Jones, who we got? Paul Robeson, Claudia Jones, W.B. Du Bois. They would either be put in exile, passports taken, or like Du Bois eventually end up leaving the country and dying in Ghana. Right, so there's a tremendous void between like 55. Like 55 to 65, right? Or I say 55 to 1960 because Malcolm would come on the scene really nationally in 1960, and he even brought civil rights people in with him. You know, like Bayard Rustin. He debated Bayard Rustin twice in 61. Okay, integration or separation is what that was called. Stokely Carmichael was a student at Howard University, and they had this program called Project Awareness, where they would bring individuals onto Howard University campus. And one of the people that E. Franklin Frazier, the sociologist, Black sociologist, he said, hey, told them, let's bring Malcolm X, and let's bring Bayard Rustin.
Black Bourgeoisie, the author of Black Bourgeoisie.
All right, and they debated. The first time they debated, they kind of debated in a radio station.
So that was at Howard? The debate?
The second debate was at Howard.
Okay.
The first debate was on the radio station.
Wow. Okay.
Right. Malcolm really didn't feel comfortable debating on the radio station. Okay. It really wasn't his thing. Maybe he just wasn't having a good day. But when you put him in front of those people, and he could read the crowd, and he can really synergize what was going on. This was the first introduction that a lot of people even had the term Black nationalism. Okay, so it would be the Black Power era young people who would carry that aspect of Black nationalism all the way through the late 1960s, you know, and 1970s, and even in places that you wouldn't imagine. Part of my dissertation research deals with Norfolk State College. They had a group called the Vanguard. The Vanguard was a group at Norfolk State College in 1970. Who their 1970 yearbook was called the Uhuru, which was totally dedicated to Malcolm X, from the front cover all the way through the back cover. And what they wanted to do was take over the student government so that way they can increase the consciousness of the student body and make them more political astute. Right? So the idealism of Malcolm X, you know, is very, very powerful. And there is a split still between Malcolm leaving the Nation of Islam, how he left, the impact of that. Because a lot of people think that a lot of our elders, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad died February 1975. There are people in Washington D.C. that I know who were there in those in that mosque during that time, and there were people, and there's still people alive who from the time where Malcolm was either independent or in the nation, and they were there, right? So so we still kind of have this rift and this split, but if we look at Dr. Khalid Muhammad, he also left the nation, okay, under Minister Farrakhan, right? So sometimes you have men who they both have big visions, okay, and along with those big visions, you just have to make some very hard, critical decisions on how you think you can best carry out this objective. One of the things that we got to understand, though, is that white supremacy is always at play. All right, and along with that, there are some nasty things that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said about Malcolm X.
A lot of the ministers said that, you know, kind of planted the foundation.
Right. And there's some bad things that Malcolm said about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Agreed. And there's some bad things that Minister Farrakhan said about Malcolm X. All right. Yes, we understand that. But I also feel that if Dr. Betty Shabazz, which she made amends with Farrakhan, because we all understand now, there were higher entities at work in the nation. Just the fact that 3 individuals were convicted for killing Malcolm, 2 were exonerated, and 1 just got out of prison about 3 or 4 years ago.
And is that the one in that video? I don't know if you saw the video with Cory Booker.
No, I'm not sure. I don't think I saw it. No, I didn't see it, because if he was in there with Cory Booker, I would have remembered.
Shaking. He was in Cory Booker promotional video, shaking a police officer's hand in the video.
Okay,
I'm gonna give you something.
Please send me that. But you know, from the fact that we know that 2 innocent black men spent 20 years in jail for supposedly being the killer of Malcolm X, and they were exonerated, saying that they were not, you know, they did not commit the crime. We still don't know who the real killers are. Right. So this is a I don't want to say conspiracy, but when we look at the death of John Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, Fred Hampton, Malcolm X, Dr. King, all in the 1960s, okay, it has to be individuals beyond just individual people coming together saying that they're going to assassinate these individuals.
Right.
I mean, you're taking out heads of states is basically what they're doing.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, that's some serious, you know, like international multi-billionaire type of gangsters there. That's people that shoot bombs over in other countries. So, you know, ain't no little somebody walking around with a Saturday night special, what they call them back in those days. That's for sure. So, yeah, brother, man, this is some deep knowledge. Anybody listening in, we got a couple more minutes here. Call in at 240-455-5934. I'm here with our brother. He's been dropping it, brother, Dr. Latif Tarik, and we have been going through much of the discussion around Malcolm X's birthday. Is coming up here on May the 19th. So I believe 82, if I'm not mistaken. I thought I saw something about 82 years old. So, you know, I mean, it's really, we gotta assess, and, you know, there are many books out here about the counterintelligence program, and Malcolm actually was aware of that. You know, it wasn't, as a matter of fact, I saw this clip, it's around that it's an interview, something where the FBI was trying to get him to do something in the nation or something, and Malcolm was like, "No, I'm not doing that. You think I'm gonna do something to hurt my?"
Malcolm was a very honest man in the sense that, I mean, he basically died broke with no money, right? And he was offered money by various entities to start mosques, you know, because a lot of people look at the differences between Malcolm X and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but what a lot of people don't pay into, as well as the growing Black Sunni Orthodox Islamic community, and then other Muslims who supported them, who did not like the orientation of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. So that's also an entity.
Wow.
And you know, that entity played out through the 1970s with murders in Philadelphia.
That Philadelphia Mosque Incorporated. It's a book out about that. Yeah,
you know, because if you go back to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he was never in the Kareem was never in the nation. All right, Kareem came out of a different orientation of Muslim. Right. Which was they were based out of Philly. Right. So is you know, even when we look at the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's son, Imam Wandi Muhammad, you know, he's basically for a very long time was Sunni Muslim. You know, and that split that you saw after 1975 with Minister Farrakhan picking it back up. The Imam deals with the orientation between the different theological schools of Islam.
Right. Yes, indeed. And that was, you know, and I was just reading about that, how Malcolm first Farrakhan was going to be a supporter of that at first, but then he decided to kind of, you know, rebuild the nation under, you know, the original teachings and that instant. So describe for me Malcolm's relationship with Wallace.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Imam Wandi Muhammad, the mosque that I mentioned earlier, Masjid Muhammad on New Jersey Avenue, Washington D.C. That is the community there, and which is the core core group that left with the Imam. And basically, Malcolm and Wallace Muhammad had a very good relationship. But one of the things that Wallace Muhammad, he was very privileged in terms of being the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's son, and what he was exposed to very early on in terms of Islam. All right. You have to understand the Honorable Elijah Muhammad from where he come from, and that is, this is a man who was born in Georgia in 1897, who comes to the Midwest, and I'm gonna say Detroit, right? Detroit during the time of the Great Migration. And one of the things that our people brought with them is what I call Black folk culture. So when you think of Black folk culture, you think of how Muddy Waters come from Mississippi, and he brings the Delta to Chess Records in Chicago, right? Well, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad brought with him Black liberation theology, the theology of the Black preacher who did not need
Garvey.
That's right, and he was a Garveyite, and we can't, we can't forget that. Not only is he a Garveyite, in the message to the Black man, he says, you know, one of the most honorable Muslims is Noble Drew Ali. You know, so when we look at the orientation of the Black Masonic tradition, Black liberation theology, and the Black Southern preacher, and what they brought in terms of political orientation and religious orientation, that's who the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was, right? So by the time Wallace comes around and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was very well established, Wallace Muhammad was able to receive a Quranic education. All right. He could read, write, not only speak the language of the Quran in terms of Quranic Arabic, but he was also taught the ways of Imam. So even when you speak to a lot of the elders in Washington D.C., what they would tell you is that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was necessary for them to be the Muslims that they are today. Everybody had to go through a transition. Some people openly accepted the transition, other people rejected the transition. Even Minister Farrakhan eventually brings the Nation of Islam closer to a Orthodox Sunni orientation. Now, some people get upset because they say, you know, that God came in the process of Master Farah Muhammad. But from a person that teaches Islam, and you look at all of the different orientations from Turkey, from Saudi Arabia, from Sufism and East Africa to West Africa, they all have their Mahdis, their teachers, these individuals that came to them in the flesh to teach them. Right? So people now understand that.
Allahism,
They accept that, all right, because who are they to judge their orientation and their belief of who God is, right? So in looking at that relationship, you know, I don't think that Malcolm, well, I know that Malcolm would have went back into the nation if the Honorable Elijah Muhammad would have let him before it got to that critical point. Okay, and he probably would have went in there, went back as a rank and file worker, maybe, right? Because he's a very humble man. But at the same time, the world was changing, and as the world changed, information changed with it. So we know that we have orientations of groups of people who are still stuck in the dogma of their time.
Right,
all right,
right. And the youth, right.
All right, and because of that, they are traditionally where they are, but they cannot influence the current day society because the body information that was needed then it worked for that age and that group of people, but it's not working for who they are right now.
Wow.
Right. So that relationship between Wallace Muhammad and Malcolm X, they had a very good relationship, and obviously, when it come down to Malcolm leaving as an individual, there are a lot of people who made that decision to stay with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. You know, even Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali stayed in the Nation of Islam roughly from the time he entered in right about 63, 64 until when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad passed away in 1975.
Wow.
And he went from the nation as well to what you would say a Sunni Muslim.
Right. I don't know. Is that somebody calling in last minute?
Yes, sir. Call for board.
Okay, all right. Peace and blessings to you, sister. Who is this?
I'm fine. I will read up for response calling.
All right. Peace and blessings, sister. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. We have a program with Derek Johnson there on May 20th at Everlasting Life.
Yes.
And featuring the life of Malcolm X.
Right. Tell us about that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Say that again.
I know Dr. Tarik as well.
Oh, beautiful. Yes. Okay. All right. So tell us about that event. I did see the promotional flyer somewhere. So tell us about that.
Well, thank you very much.
Sure. Go ahead.
Go ahead now. Good evening.
Yes. What else? The event is May the 20th.
May 20th at 6 o'clock p.m. The doors open. And we have the event for Malcolm X. The event will be celebrating the life of Malcolm X and Everlasting Life.
Excuse me, man. Turn your radio down. The radio is yeah, the radio is several seconds behind.
Yeah, the delay.
Several seconds delay. So speak right to us directly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're going to Mr. Derek Johnson performing his original play on Malcolm X and American Legend on May 20th at 7 o'clock p.m. We'll have vendors before the time 7 o'clock p.m. We'll be at Everlasting Life at 9185 Central Avenue,
Yes.
Captain Heights, Maryland. And we are in collaboration with the Sisters United. The company is called Lightning Edutainment.
Okay.
Derek Johnson is the CEO of that company and also a director of the company. And you'll have African drumming that evening for us, as well as a wonderful performance of his original play.
Okay.
I call it Broadway Bound.
Oh, beautiful.
Wonderful one man. It's a wonderful presentation about the life of Malcolm X. Wonderful photographs and montage right behind him the entire time.
That's awesome. Do you have any comments, questions, or input on tonight's show?
I wanted to commend Dr. Tarik. I met him with the Apollo program for the past couple of years on the Servant of Same Committee. So I want to commend him on a wonderful project, a wonderful program tonight, and a wonderful comments tonight as well. A lot of deep history.
Thank you.
Right. Hey, sister. Well, definitely reach back out for me. I definitely want you to call back in next week as well. You know, plug that event that you're having, of course. So, and we definitely we definitely can talk. All right. Or you can give me a call as well at 410-209-9687. Or you know how to reach me. So. Yeah. Definitely reach out for me. Now I'll let the audience know again this week. And I'm gonna get ready to close out here. Definitely let everybody know we got this Malcolm X Day in Baltimore on May the 21st at Terra Cafe. Our brother Dr. Mark Bowden gonna discuss the family. He's a psychologist, mental health role, and brother Jared Ball, who brother has his book. Let me hold that book up here. the law of reinvention. So we're gonna have our brother Dr. Jared Ball in Baltimore. We did another something like that a weekend. We did Baltimore as well as here at Everlasting Life maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So it's been a long time, but I was looking around. I said, man, I need to wrap this up again. Nobody's wasn't anything happening between Baltimore and DC that I saw. So I appreciate the sister having this at Everlasting Life coming up here. But definitely let's plug this again next week. So yeah, please, definitely. So